the level of experimentation required, because Gen AI is a totally new space, right? So we have tried fine tuning. We do a RAG based approach.
Welcome to the Highlight Podcast. We're working on a fresh series of episodes interviewing technology builders to talk about the joys and travails of building products. Nothing of true value gets created without someone, somewhere, sweating the details and willing it into existence. Today we're talking with Alex Danilowicz. He's a co-founder of MagicPatterns, a generative AI tool backed by Y Combinator that helps builders to design and develop their front-end web applications. And it feels like magic.
Thanks, Alex, for being willing to just jump on here. How's life?
Nice. Of course. Nice. My mom is a television producer and used to be a television reporter. So this is the dream right here. I'm merging. This is the family destiny, writing software, but then ending up on the Highlight podcast video recording.
Nice. So maybe we start with just a quick intro. Tell us a little bit about you. How did you get to start working on MagicPatterns? And then maybe we can jump a little more into what the product does.
Yeah, thanks, Jay. Yeah, my name's Alex. I'm the co-founder of MagicPatterns. We did the Y Combinator Winter 23 cohort, and we generate UI from a text prompt. We launched roughly 5 months ago, and it's been a lot of fun. We're led to it because we're solving a problem for ourselves, which is as former front-end engineers, we wanted to basically automate our jobs and make our lives easier.
Nice. And then you said you've been working on it for 5 months. How big is your team? And I guess like if someone were to go to your website right now, like what can they expect with just interacting with the product and things like that?
Yeah, so our team is 2 people and you're looking at half of it. It's just me and my co-founder.
Okay.
My co-founder and I are best friends. He was the best man at my wedding. We were college roommates. We've been building product together for the last 8 years now. And if you go to our website today, you'll see there's like a text prompt. Our landing page is literally our product. You can type in anything and then select your component library. That's what differentiates us from some of the other like Gen AI tools. We really believe that like bringing your data, in this case, your component library, is really, really critical to Gen AI tools. So that's what we do.
Okay. Very cool. What are some interesting like use cases for it, Alex? Like, I guess,
Yeah.
I can imagine as a front-end engineer, like if I want to quickly just prototype a landing page or even like a particular React component in my code base, that seems pretty useful. Like, are there actual use cases you're seeing in companies where this is kind of a niche that you can kind of grow into? And what does that look like?
Yeah, so it's been interesting. You know, the landing page is the classic example, right? You type in a landing page for an amazing observability tool or something. And what we realized is the use case that we're seeing is at companies is really importing from Figma because that's the workflow, right? So at larger companies, front-end engineers are basing off of design mockups, which live in Figma. And so we recently added an import to Figma feature, and that's been very popular. Also for like kind of the prosumer angle. So at a company like ours, only 2 people, we use Figma, but not everything we do is based off of Figma mockups. It's going off of like generating very complex components. For example, one of our customers, they wanted to recreate the GitHub commit history component, all those little tiles. It's pretty complicated to do by hand, but they use MagicPatterns to do it from a text prompt in that case, saying, recreate me the GitHub commit history component.
Are there any hesitations around the fact that I have an existing huge code base? I import a small component out of it into Figma to convert to MagicPatterns and it not like agreeing with the hierarchy of my code base. And you know what I mean? Or is that generally fine because that's just how React works and you guys have built it in like a React forward way? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a great question. So yes, right now we really focus on the component, right? Component meaning the literal React component, like what boils down to a React component. Of course, we all know realistically a component can be an entire page, or it can be as small as a button in its own file, right? But and we have we're going to talk about this later, but we have a GPT and we call it component GPT, kind of again driving home on the point of we have one we best produce components, right? So what makes it up, you could also call it like the molecules, right? Of you have a button and an input and a search bar. That's what we would be best at, as opposed to say, a full on page.
Got it. And can I, as an engineer, give Magic Patterns context on the context that's importing that component? That way, you know what I mean? Like it spits out the component, but really I want it to accept 4 props, each of which have these enums or whatever. You know what I mean? Like getting a little more like
Yep.
specific.
Yep. So again, a use case that we learned from working with our customers is exactly that. People submitting like a TypeScript enum saying, "Hey, build me a product status banner with this TypeScript enum," and it actually leveraging that. So that's another way in which we differentiate, and we allow companies to bring their own custom component libraries.
From the second that I send some text through that input box on your landing page to the thing getting rendered back at me, how does that work? And then also maybe like follow up questions around making it better and all that kind of stuff. Like, how do you think
Mhm.
about it as an engineering challenge?
Yes. So it is has been quite the engineering challenge, and one really interesting thing about the product that I haven't experienced in the other products that I've built with my co-founder before. Again, we've been building products 8 years together. Is the level of experimentation required, because Gen AI is a totally new space, right? So we have tried fine tuning. We do a RAG based approach. Some of the models that you use today on our landing page, some are fine tuned, some are using a RAG based approach. Some are using an old RAG, and what RAG means is retrieval augmented generation, where basically when you type into the search bar, you might type in a landing page for an observability tool. It's grabbing all the components relevant to that design system and that component library that you might need. So it's going to grab a button, it's going to grab the gallery, it's going to grab maybe an avatar for a testimonials section, and it's fetching that from our vector database. Um, or it's using a fine-tuned model, depending on what you're doing. But
Oh,
um,
so the way so like let's say I type I want a GitHub commit graph. Let's use that example, right?
mhm.
And it's mapped to a specific Esplin UI, right? We're using Esplin UI. Um, does does it like how do you know to retrieve those, let's say, the 20 components from your vector database, comparing it? Is it just a is it a simple like, vector comparison, like you just do a cosine or whatever, like the compare the two embeddings, or how does that all work?
That's exactly right. I mean, so in that case, let's say Epsilon UI has a button and an input, and we're building the search bar.
Okay.
The user types in search bar. We then expand on that and ask the large language model, okay, what components do we need? We need a button. What makes up a search bar? A button and an input. And then we fetch from our vector database the button and the input from Epsilon UI.
Oh, that's so interesting. But then when you ask it to give you all of the components and now I'm understanding why this gets super complicated. When you ask it what are the components you need for the search bar, you need to limit its search because it can't spit out like I need a chair or some like random stuff, right? Like because you don't have a chair component, right? So like, yeah, like I guess there's a lot of coercing to make sure that the output of the language model is something that you actually have, and it's a weird non-Boolean logic programming language in and of itself.
That's correct. And so what's been really interesting, like building in the Gen AI space, is unlike other projects, it's non-deterministic, right? And it requires so much experimentation of it can be very custom at times for what we're doing. I mean, of course, um, I'm so confident because anything that can be done by a human, right? Me integrating things in a custom manner can be done by a computer program. But it's been interesting, like regarding that scoring that you're referring to, right? If you don't want the chair, if there's a chair component, you don't want the chair component to be relevant in the search bar. But what we've been starting to play around with the scores. So we use Pinecone, and Pinecone returns scores of the similarity of the prompt and what's returned. And so if the score is under a certain threshold, we'll throw it out. Yeah.
Oh, interesting, interesting. And then maybe if you don't get enough results back, you kind of try to add your own or something like that. But it's basically do your best to get an answer back that you think
Exactly. So
suits.
what's kind of interesting is literally today I was talking to a customer who is using Radix UI, um, which we support. I don't know if it's Radix or Radix actually, despite me using it myself. It's one of those things I read 1,000 times. I never heard it pronounced. Anyway, using that component library, they don't have an accordion for radix themes. But if you prompt Magic Patterns an accordion, give me an accordion in radix themes, it will give you an accordion using box and flex and text components, but with the functionality of an accordion. In other words, it reconstructs the accordion because in our vector DB, it didn't return the accordion. It doesn't
Yeah,
exist.
interesting. It's almost like when you ask that question, you could build into the product a way for the user to long term to like coerce that themselves, like I want to use this
Exactly.
rando component and here's the GitHub URL and then you just do the rest for them or something.
Exactly. It's been a lot of fun how this can expand beyond UI, but still related into the front end space. For example, building a form often requires using a certain form library, whether it's Zod or whatever, form validator. And so including that in the output of when you ask Magic Patterns for a form.
Okay, then tell us more about so I send a request, I put some stuff into the input box, right? And then
Mhm.
you do all this rag or pine cone and all that stuff, and then that's great. And then I get a component back, right? What happens after that? Like is it then and
Ah,
done, or is there more stuff to the product? What does it look like?
Definitely not then and done. I'm also laughing over all these terms, rag and pine cone. After this call, my wife is going to be like, "What on earth were you talking about?"
Yeah.
um,
I'm glad you defined rag, by the way. I feel like
oh, thank you.
I don't know
Yeah.
if people say rag. I guess people say rag. That's how I've read it online, but yeah, anyway.
So yes, what happens after the rag based approach? You get a component back. There's a lot of post processing that we do. So we want to minimize. What we do is we minimize what the AI needs to think about, right? So what we will do is we ourselves will wrap the component in the given theme that it needs to be in. So for example, if you use Chakra, all your components need to be wrapped in a Chakra provider. We'll wrap it in the Chakra provider. We're not like telling the AI like, "Hey, wrap it in. Don't forget to wrap it in a Chakra provider," because if anything that we can do deterministically, we're going to do. I mean, that's been like an approach that we're very proud of. Like, it's been a lot of fun to build. Is like not defaulting to AI for everything, because ultimately we're computer programmers and we love things that are deterministic. And it's been interesting to see how that's changed. So we'll do a lot of post processing, and then we'll send that to our front end. And then as we kind of stream it in, we're actually attempting to like reconstruct the React tree to get it to render, kind of see it as it's loading in. That's definitely a difficult challenge. My co-founders tweeted about it a couple times. The different algorithms you can use for that.
Which, by the
Um,
way, Tederific on Twitter, is that what it is?
yes,
Man is popping off these last 3 months. But how do you spell it? You should spell it, Alex, so people know they can follow him.
Teddarific.
Okay, we'll add it in the chat in the description or whatever.
Terrific. Yeah, it's slight tangent about Twitter. It's been so interesting. The things that we post that we don't think about, we have no intention of going viral, like we're just posting cool stuff. That's the stuff that goes viral. That's what works really well. If we think about it and we're like, what's the perfect caption? It gets one like.
And that like is like me. Okay, but okay, so to go back to this, like to how to so you want to generate wait, why do you want to do that? Why do you want to generate the component? Like is it more is it
Oh,
also just like ChatGPT where I get like I can read it as it's coming down? I want to be able to start to visualize the component and it's maybe better for the user experience.
yes, it's just basically to eliminate that the sense that nothing's happening. So we stream back the code, but because it's a stream, it's just the top part of the component, right? You render a div, and then there's all this content, the children, the content within the div, but you need to render the bottom tag. So you have all this stream of content, and then you need to render the closing tags basically. So we render all the closing tags. If it works, it often does not work, to be honest with you. We want to get better at it. And also I think over time, as the model is faster, this requires less need for that. But then once we get it back, we render it in an iframe. There's no secret sauce. You can look at our code. We render it in an iframe, which is wrapped, where the component is wrapped in the given component library provider.
Got it. This sounds like a programming interview question.
It's very interesting. Now, here's where kind of commenting on that aspect as if that the way we've actually have had great success with that, like what has improved the algorithm more than anything, we have unit tests for it, like at different points in the stream, like different code snippets. And I literally have asked ChatGPT, like, here's my unit test. Like, how can I write the edge case for me? That's part of my greater function. Like we wrote the initial algorithm, but then like to fix every single edge case, right? Like let's say you're halfway through a Tailwind class name, or your styling curly brace is messed up, right? Like I have a ton of tests for it that we threw against ChatGPT, which is interesting because I think that's definitely evolving how I would assess like a candidate, you know?
Oh, it's almost like that's part of it's like if they're anti AI, they're just less productive.
In my opinion, yeah. Like I would want the candidate to say like, oh, and then as a last step, I might think about some edge cases and write unit tests to
To
feed to ChatGPT.
yeah. Okay. How does this compare to something like Copilot and like among your current customers that use it, right? Like how does I mean it to me it's pretty different, right? But it does
Mhm.
seem like both are part of an engineer's toolbox. Like one is not replacing the other. Is that true? And yeah, what is your general thought on that sort of thing?
Yeah, that's certainly true. Our customers who use Copilot also use us. I use Copilot. Copilot's amazing. I would say Magic Patterns is different, right? We're trying to be also a design tool. We're right there in our UI. You see the component and you can rapidly iterate on it, and it's very visual. And front end in general is very visual. That's what inspired the product. Versus Copilot, you're not rendering UI directly there in VS Code. And maybe one day Magic Patterns VS Code extension. Who knows? Or IDE one day. I mean, those are things we talk about, right? To try to bring it more into where the developer already lives. So you can take a Figma mockup or a Figma design and import it into Magic Patterns and then generate code using your component library. A lot of Figma plugins today, they just generate with like HTML and CSS. And then also, let's say you don't have a Figma mockup, you can just type a text prompt into Magic Patterns and then actually export that to Figma. So it's like bi-directional, which has been surprisingly, we track, which features are used. There's been way more exports to Figma than I expected, like thousands.
So you mentioned something earlier about the GPT store. And
Yeah,
I heard, as a evangelist of Tederific on Twitter, that you guys like launched a GPT app or something like that.
yeah, it's called Component GPT, and I was skeptical at first, but check it out. The GPT store, I think it's funny to me, like, they launched it at OpenAI Dev Day, and they're like GPT Store, and everyone's saying this is the new Apple App Store, this is the future. And then it was launched, and people were like, no one's really using it. The output is not that good. But I think the key unlock that we've discovered is it's called Component GPT, and it actually hits our API and then takes you to Magic Patterns once it's generated.
Like, what is a
Yeah.
GPT? Like, what? So,
Yes.
yeah, like I don't even know what that is. So, the GPT store presumably is a set of apps that I can interact with using ChatGPT. Is that correct?
Correct. That is
Okay.
correct.
And Component GPT is one of those apps that you guys made. Yeah.
Correct. Component GPT is the name of our app.
Cool. And so then I can jump into ChatGPT and be like, oh, I'm really interested in contribution graphs on GitHub. And then maybe I have a conversation with it. And then at some point I'm like, can you make me a contribution graph? And it will know to pull for chat for your app, or do I have to particularly prompt it in a way? How does that work?
Yeah. So exactly right. The GPT store is like the Apple App Store. And imagine you're in the GPT store and you're going to see us under design and developer tools. You're going to see Component GPT. Once you click on it, the way that works is it's going to give you some suggested prompts, or just like you were on our landing page, magicpatterns.com, you could just type in a prompt like, I want a component that looks like the GitHub contribution graph. But what's different about Component GPT versus our product, which is why I'm very bullish and just like interested in the GPT store in general, it's brand new, right? It forces you to kind of expand the prompt. So you type in a component for a GitHub contribution graph. And then Component GPT will say, hey, tell me a little bit more. What design system do you want it in? And what colors do you want to use? Are you building something to show commit history, or do you want to show something like revenue or whatever
Got it.
customer contributions?
And sorry to keep interrupting you, but are you so are you telling the GPT store via your integration with it in the Component GPT setup stage or whatever that you would prefer these requirements from a given individual before sending the API request?
That's correct. Yeah, that's correct. And it's what was also amazing is it only took us like 2 hours to build, because I mean, all the heavy lifting is 4 months of post processing code and our API and everything, right? That's where the magic is. But what was incredible, and I'm really impressed with the developer experience at OpenAI, is how easy it was to build the GPT and have it as another inbound channel for us.
That's pretty cool. And then yeah, how does that work? How does the growth channel work? So like if some random person is happening to ask this type of question, would they be like suggested your app?
No. So the way it works is much like the Apple App Store. You have to find us under a category. It's not like
Okay.
you type in on ChatGPT, I want a GitHub contribution graph, and it's like, oh, use this GPT, stop using me.
Okay, okay,
At
okay.
least not yet. There
That
are
might that
elements
makes
of
sense though, right? Like that would be a great, like in the same way that search, it's almost like, yeah, in the same way that search is such a big part of being in the Apple App Store, like making sure that your icon is nice and the text and the images are perfect and all that stuff. This is yet another way that if OpenAI knows what your thing is about, uh, I guess semantically, it could probably just prop things up in a non-intrusive way. But maybe that's when the internet gets uh, like bombarded with ads, and then everyone stops using it. But I don't know.
everything reverts back to Google as it is today. It's just a recurring endless cycle.
Thanks, Alex, for joining. This was super fun. Um, as I mentioned earlier, I know you really well at this point, but I'm sure the audience has gotten Had a great time getting to know you, and yeah, thanks for coming to the show. Um, we'll end with 3 questions, just kind of like speed run these questions. First question is, what is your favorite uh, delimiter in your code editor? Is it tabs or spaces? And why?
It's tabs, and the only reason for that is I don't think I've ever tried spaces. Like
Oh,
it's just
interesting.
I'm
Very,
pretty
very
sure
humble.
my prettier setup is tabs, and I use tabs.
Okay, okay,
I
okay.
wish I
That's a
had a
very humble
more
answer.
I wish I had a more OG answer for you, like, oh well, because I use Vim or Emacs and blah 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 blah. No, I use Cursor. It's the 21st century, and I use tabs.
Okay, nice. Second question, less coding forward, but what's your favorite dessert?
Ben and Jerry's ice cream, 100% chocolate fudge brownie.
Oh, okay. Do you know the Americone Dream?
Of course, Stephen
Dude,
Colbert.
that's my favorite one. That's my favorite one. I have it in my fridge right now. Or in my freezer. I hope it's not in my fridge. Anyway, okay. And then last question is where can people find you? Give us like a few links or websites, all that kind of fun stuff.
Yes. Feel free to DM me on Twitter. My handle is Alex Danilo, Danilo 99. I've had Twitter since high school. I recently had my 10-year Twitter anniversary. I didn't use it for about 8 years, and then I started a company, and it's been an awesome marketing and or like just connecting with users and customers. So now I'm back on Twitter, or should I say X. And then you can also find us at magicpatterns.com. One word. That was amazing. $10 for that domain name, by the way, .com. So
Good stuff. Damn, that's crazy. Okay, okay. But nice, cool. Yeah, again, Alex, this was really fun. Thank you for your time, especially on short notice. I think we messaged you about this like 3 days ago or something. Um, and yeah, I'm sure everyone will really enjoy listening to your story, what you're doing at Magic Patterns, and yeah, follow, like, subscribe, all the things, everyone. Thank you.
yeah, thank you so much. This was super fun. There's truly no better way to want to spend my Friday afternoon talking to fellow builders and talking about the product and company. So thanks so much.